There's a world that exists between water and land, a place where the rules shift with each breath, where skin must stay moist under open sky, and lungs must learn to work in two separate realms. It's a threshold most creatures never cross, but for one remarkable group of animals, this boundary is home. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. Tonight, we're stepping into the lives of amphibians, those extraordinary animals whose very name speaks to their dual existence. From frogs that transform completely before our eyes, to salamanders that can regenerate lost limbs, from toxic skin defenses evolved over millions of years, to ancient evolutionary bridges between water and land, amphibians carry within them stories that stretch back nearly 400 million years. They are survivors of mass extinctions, masters of metamorphosis, and living reminders that the most profound changes often happen gradually, quietly, in places we rarely think to look. Their world is one of transformation and adaptation, of chemical warfare and parental devotion, of breathing through skin and seeing colors humans cannot perceive. Some spend their entire lives in water, never venturing onto land. Others return to water only to breed, spending years wandering through forests. Still others burrow deep beneath the soil, blind and worm-like, rarely seen by human eyes. What unites them all is a fundamental connection to moisture, to water, to the delicate balance between two completely different ways of living. As we settle in for this journey, let the sounds of rain on leaves and the soft calls of distant frogs remind you that even now, somewhere in the world, a tadpole is growing its first legs. A newt is returning to water after years on land, and an ancient lineage continues its patient dance between two realms. The word amphibian comes from Greek roots, meaning both lives, or dual life, and it captures something essential about these animals. They are creatures of transition, embodying a way of being that doesn't fit neatly into categories of purely aquatic or purely terrestrial. To understand what makes an amphibian, we need to look beyond the familiar image of a frog on a lily pad and see the deeper patterns that unite this diverse group. Amphibians are vertebrates, animals with backbones, and they form a class of their own within the animal kingdom, separate from fish, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Globally, there are approximately 8,000 known species of amphibians, and new ones are discovered regularly, especially in remote tropical rainforests. These species are divided into three main groups, each with its own distinctive features and way of life. The order, Anura, which includes frogs and toads, contains about 7,000 species and represents the largest group by far. As adults, these animals are typically tailless, with powerful hind legs designed for jumping. Their bodies are compact, often with large eyes positioned on top of the head, and most have moist, smooth skin, though toads tend to have wartier, drier skin than frogs. Anurans are found on every continent except Antarctica, from tropical rainforests to temperate woodlands, from deserts to Arctic tundra. Some live their entire lives in trees, others burrow underground, and still others remain aquatic even as adults. The order Chordata, comprising salamanders and newts, includes roughly 750 species. Unlike frogs, These amphibians keep their tails throughout life, and most have 4 legs of roughly equal size, giving them an elongated, lizard-like appearance. They move through the world differently than frogs, often walking with a side-to-side undulation that echoes the swimming motion of their fish ancestors. Salamanders range from tiny species barely longer than your finger to the Chinese giant salamander, which can exceed 5 feet in length. While many are terrestrial as adults, newts are notable for their complex life cycles that include both aquatic and terrestrial phases. The third group, the order Gymnophiona, consists of the caecilians, perhaps the least known of all amphibians. These are limbless, worm-like creatures that live mostly underground in tropical regions. With approximately 200 species, caecilians are specialized burrowers with reinforced skulls and reduced eyes, sometimes hidden beneath skin or bone. They're found in South and Central America, Africa, and parts of Asia. But their secretive lifestyle means even scientists rarely encounter them in the wild. What unites all these diverse creatures is a set of shared characteristics that define amphibian life. Perhaps most fundamentally, amphibians have permeable skin. Unlike reptiles with their scales or mammals with their fur and thick epidermis, amphibian skin is thin and allows substances to pass through it relatively easily. This permeability serves a crucial function because amphibians can breathe, at least partially, through their skin. Oxygen dissolves into the moisture on the skin's surface and diffuses through into tiny blood vessels called capillaries just beneath. Carbon dioxide moves in the opposite direction, from the blood out through the skin and into the surrounding air or water. This remarkable ability, called cutaneous respiration, is not just a supplementary system, but can account for a significant portion of an amphibian's oxygen intake. In some species of lungless salamanders, it's the only method of breathing they have. The family Plethodontidae includes hundreds of species that have lost their lungs entirely and rely exclusively on their skin and the lining of their mouth and throat for gas exchange. Even in species with well-developed lungs, the skin plays an important role, particularly for exchanging carbon dioxide, which diffuses more readily through moist membranes than oxygen does. But permeable skin comes with costs. It means amphibians lose water rapidly when exposed to dry conditions, which is why most species are tied to moist environments. They cannot regulate water loss the way reptiles and mammals can with their waterproof outer layers. This vulnerability to desiccation shapes nearly every aspect of amphibian life, from where they can live to when they can be active. Many amphibians are nocturnal, emerging only after sunset when humidity rises and temperatures drop. Others remain in humid microhabitats, sheltering under logs, in leaf litter, or in burrows during the day. Amphibians are also ectothermic, sometimes called cold-blooded, though this term can be misleading. It doesn't mean their blood is always cold, but rather that they don't generate their own body heat metabolically, the way mammals and birds do. Instead, an amphibian's body temperature matches, more or less, the temperature of its surroundings. This has profound implications. In cold weather, amphibians slow down, their metabolism dropping as temperatures fall. Many species hibernate through winter, burrowing into mud at the bottom of ponds, or hiding deep in the soil where they won't freeze. Some frogs can actually tolerate being frozen solid, with ice crystals forming in their body cavity, only to thaw out and resume life when spring returns. The life cycle of most amphibians is what truly sets them apart from other terrestrial vertebrates. The majority of species undergo metamorphosis, beginning life in an entirely different form than they will have as adults. Eggs are typically laid in water or very moist environments, as the jelly-like coating surrounding them offers no protection against drying out. From these eggs hatch larvae, tadpoles in the case of frogs, which are fully aquatic and breathe through gills. Over weeks or months, these larvae undergo a dramatic transformation, developing lungs, growing limbs, and in many cases reabsorbing their tails, emerging eventually as air-breathing animals capable of life on land. This biphasic life cycle, living first in water and later on land, is what the word amphibian encapsulates. It's a pattern seen across most species, though variations abound. Some frogs have direct development, hatching from eggs as tiny froglets rather than tadpoles. Some salamanders remain in their larval form throughout life, reaching sexual maturity while retaining gills and other juvenile features. The diversity within this group is remarkable, but at its heart, the amphibian story is one of transformation, of living at the boundary between two worlds. If there is one phenomenon that captures the public imagination about amphibians, it is metamorphosis. To watch a creature that swims through water with a tail and gills slowly, inevitably, transform into an entirely different animal with legs and lungs is to witness one of nature's most astonishing processes. The change is so complete, so fundamental, that early naturalists once believed tadpoles and adult frogs were separate species entirely. In frogs and toads, metamorphosis begins long before it becomes visible to casual observers. It starts in early spring, when adult frogs emerge from hibernation and make their way to breeding sites. Males call from the water, each species with its own distinctive sound, filling the night with croaks, trills, and peeps. When a male successfully attracts a female, he grasps her in an embrace called amplexus, holding on while she releases eggs into the water. As the eggs emerge, the male fertilizes them externally, and thousands of tiny spheres settle among aquatic vegetation, each one containing the beginning of a new life. Inside the protective jelly coating, which helps cushion the developing embryo and provides some defense against predators, the fertilized egg begins to divide. Cells multiply and organize themselves, forming the basic body plan of a tadpole. Within 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the species and water temperature, the tiny tadpoles hatch. At this stage, they're barely recognizable, more a mouth and a tail than anything else, with external gills sprouting from either side of the head, like delicate feathers. For the first few days, these newly hatched tadpoles don't swim much. They remain relatively still, often attached to vegetation or the remnant of their egg jelly, living off the last reserves of yolk contained within them. But soon they're strong enough to venture out, and they begin the serious business of feeding. Tadpoles are primarily herbivorous, using rows of tiny keratinized teeth to scrape algae from rocks and tear apart bits of aquatic plants. Their digestive system is adapted for this diet, with a long, coiled intestine that efficiently breaks down plant material. As tadpoles grow, their external gills disappear, replaced by internal gills covered by a flap of skin called the operculum. They continue feeding voraciously, growing larger, but otherwise remaining quite fish-like in appearance. This larval stage can last anywhere from a few weeks to several months, or even years in some species. wood frog tadpoles in cold northern climates might take an entire summer to develop, while spadefoot toad tadpoles in temporary desert pools can complete metamorphosis in as little as 2 weeks, racing against the drying of their pond. The trigger for the next stage of development is hormonal. The tadpole's thyroid gland begins producing thyroxine, a hormone that sets in motion a cascade of changes throughout the body. This is not a gradual adjustment, but a profound reorganization of nearly every organ system. The effect of thyroxine is dose-dependent and tissue-specific. Different parts of the body respond to different concentrations of the hormone, which allows the transformation to proceed in a coordinated sequence. The first visible sign of metamorphosis in most tadpoles is the appearance of hind legs. These begin as small bumps at the base of the tail, then gradually lengthen and differentiate into recognizable limbs with toes. The front legs develop simultaneously, but remain hidden beneath the operculum until later in the process. While the legs are growing, the tadpole's skull begins to reshape. The cartilaginous structures that support a tadpole's feeding apparatus start to dissolve and are replaced by the bony skull of an adult frog. The mouth widens and a muscular tongue begins to form, designed not for scraping algae, but for catching flying insects. Internally, the changes are even more dramatic. The long, coiled intestine suitable for digesting plant matter shortens considerably, adapting to the carnivorous diet of an adult frog. The gills dissolve, and in their place, lungs develop and expand, filling with air for the first time. The heart, which in a tadpole pumps blood in a simple circuit similar to a fish, restructures to accommodate the dual system of pulmonary and systemic circulation needed for an air-breathing animal. The tadpole's lateral line system, a series of sensory organs that detect pressure changes in water and are essential for aquatic life, degrades and disappears. The eyes, which were positioned on the sides of the head for detecting predators in water, migrate to the top of the head, providing better vision on land. The skin itself changes, developing more glands and losing some of the adaptations specific to aquatic life, though retaining the permeability essential for cutaneous respiration. Through all of this, the tadpole continues its daily routines, still feeding, still swimming, but gradually becoming something else. About 24 hours before the transformation is complete, everything accelerates. The front legs break through the operculum and emerge into view. The tail, which has served as the tadpole's primary means of propulsion, begins to shrink. This is not simply atrophy or decay. The tail is actually being reabsorbed by the body, its tissues broken down, and their nutrients recycled. This controlled cell death, called apoptosis, provides a source of protein and energy that sustains the young frog during this critical period when it cannot feed efficiently. When the tail is reduced to a small stub, the transformation is essentially complete. What emerges from the water is a tiny frog, often no bigger than a fingernail, but fully equipped for terrestrial life. It has lungs for breathing air, legs for jumping, and a tongue for catching prey. These newly metamorphosed froglets typically spend a few days near the water's edge, adjusting to their new way of life, before dispersing into the surrounding habitat. For many species, these young frogs won't return to water for years, not until they reach sexual maturity and the cycle begins again. The entire process, from egg to froglet, can take as little as 12 weeks in some species, or extend to several months in others. Environmental factors play a crucial role in the timing. Warmer water accelerates metamorphosis, while colder temperatures slow it down. But temperature isn't the only influence. Tadpoles can sense danger in their environment and respond accordingly. If predators are abundant or the pond is drying up, tadpoles can speed up their development, transforming earlier than they otherwise would, even if it means emerging at a smaller size. Conversely, if conditions are favorable with plenty of food, low predation, and stable water levels, tadpoles can delay metamorphosis, remaining in the larval stage longer and growing larger before they transform. This developmental plasticity is a remarkable adaptation, allowing amphibians to adjust their life history to match local conditions. It reveals that metamorphosis is not a rigid, predetermined program, but a flexible response to environmental cues. The tadpole is continually assessing its world and making adjustments, balancing the benefits of growing larger as a tadpole against the risks of remaining aquatic. In some species, this flexibility extends even further. Certain salamanders can remain in a larval state indefinitely if the terrestrial environment is unsuitable, reproducing while retaining gills and other juvenile features, a phenomenon we'll explore more deeply when we turn to their stories. While frogs command most of the public's attention when it comes to amphibian metamorphosis, salamanders and newts have their own equally fascinating transformations, often more complex than those of their tailless cousins. The life cycle of a typical newt unfolds in 3 distinct stages, each adapted to a different habitat, and the journey from egg to reproducing adult can span several years of patient development. Consider the eastern newt, common across much of eastern North America, as our guide through this tripartite existence. In early spring, adult newts gather in ponds, lakes, and slow-moving streams. The males develop specialized features for breeding, including enlarged hind legs and a high dorsal fin that runs along the tail. They perform elaborate courtship displays, undulating their bodies and releasing pheromones into the water. Once a female accepts a male's advances, he deposits a spermatophore on the pond bottom, which she picks up with her cloaca to fertilize her eggs internally. Over the following weeks, the female carefully lays her eggs one at a time on aquatic vegetation, often folding leaves around each egg for protection. Unlike frogs, which may lay thousands of eggs in a single mass, newts are more conservative, producing perhaps 200 to 400 eggs over an extended period. Each egg is attended with care, placed strategically in locations that offer both concealment from predators and good water flow for oxygenation. When the larvae hatch after 3 to 5 weeks, they emerge as fully aquatic creatures with feathery external gills protruding from behind their heads. These gills are larger and more elaborate than those of a tadpole, often bright red from the dense network of blood vessels running through them. The larvae are carnivorous from the start, feeding on tiny aquatic invertebrates like water fleas and mosquito larvae. Unlike tadpole development, which involves a wholesale reorganization of the body, salamander larvae already look like miniature versions of salamanders. They have 4 legs, a long tail with a fin, and a head equipped with keen eyes for hunting. The first transformation occurs after 2 to 5 months, when the larvae begin metamorphosing into what's called an eft. During this transition, the external gills are reabsorbed, lungs develop fully, and the tail fin reduces. The skin, which was smooth and suited for aquatic life, becomes thicker and slightly rougher to reduce water loss. Most dramatically, the colour changes. While aquatic larvae are typically olive green to blend with underwater vegetation, EFTs turn a brilliant orange or reddish colour, sometimes almost fluorescent in its intensity. This bright coloration serves a purpose. Red efts are toxic to eat. Their skin contains tetrodotoxin, the same neurotoxin found in pufferfish, though in lower concentrations. The brilliant colour is a warning to potential predators that eating one of these small salamanders would be a painful mistake. Birds, snakes, and mammals quickly learn to avoid the distinctive orange form wandering across the forest floor. And wander they do. Unlike most amphibian larvae, which transform and then remain relatively close to water, red efts embark on a terrestrial journey that can last 2 to 3 years. They leave the pond where they hatched and disperse into the surrounding forest, travelling considerable distances. During their wanderings, efts seek out humid microhabitats, under logs, in leaf litter, and beneath rocks, emerging on rainy days and humid nights to hunt for small invertebrates. They breathe primarily through their skin and the lining of their mouths, having no need for standing water now that they've developed lungs. This terrestrial phase serves several functions. It allows the newts to colonize new areas, spreading the population beyond a single breeding pond. It reduces competition for resources at the natal pond, and it provides time for the newts to grow and mature before the energetic demands of reproduction. For those 3 years or so, the EFT is neither fully aquatic nor fully terrestrial, but occupies a middle ground, dependent on moisture, but not on open water. The second transformation begins when the EFT reaches sexual maturity. Chemical and hormonal changes trigger a return to aquatic life. The skin becomes smoother again, turning from bright orange to olive green or yellowish brown. The tail develops a prominent fin for efficient swimming. The eyes, which had adapted somewhat to terrestrial vision, adjust again for underwater sight. The EFT, now a fully adult newt, makes its way back to water, sometimes travelling long distances to find suitable breeding habitat. Once in water, adult newts live a mostly aquatic life, though they can and do venture onto land if their pond dries up, or if they need to travel to new water bodies. They hunt aquatic invertebrates, small fish, and amphibian eggs, and they become part of the breeding population, continuing the cycle. Some individuals may live 12 to 15 years, breeding multiple times over their lifespan. Not all newts and salamanders follow this exact pattern. Some skip the terrestrial EFT stage entirely, transforming directly from aquatic larvae to aquatic adults. This variation is particularly common in coastal populations and in areas where the surrounding land is less hospitable. The triggers for skipping the EFT stage aren't completely understood, but they appear to be related to environmental conditions. If the terrestrial habitat is too dry or too dangerous, or if the aquatic habitat is particularly favourable, natural selection might favour individuals who remain in the water. Even more remarkably, some salamanders never undergo metamorphosis at all, a phenomenon called pedomorphosis or neoteny. The axolotl, a salamander native to lakes near Mexico City, is perhaps the most famous example. Axolotls retain their external gills, tail fins, and other larval characteristics throughout their lives, yet they reach sexual maturity and reproduce successfully in this seemingly juvenile form. The trigger for metamorphosis in most salamanders involves thyroid hormones, but axolotls have a genetic difference in how their bodies process these hormones, essentially keeping them in a permanent larval state. Interestingly, if an axolotl is given thyroid hormone supplements or certain environmental stresses, it can be induced to metamorphose, losing its gills, absorbing its tail fin, and becoming a more terrestrial salamander. This reveals that the potential for metamorphosis remains within them, simply switched off by their particular genetics and environment. In the wild, neoteny seems to be favoured in habitats where aquatic life is viable year-round, and the terrestrial environment is less predictable or less suitable. The existence of lungless salamanders adds yet another layer to the diversity of salamander life cycles. The Plethodontidae family includes hundreds of species, many of which have lost their lungs entirely through evolution. These salamanders breathe exclusively through their skin and the lining of their throats. Most are terrestrial as adults, living in moist forest habitats, and some have even eliminated the aquatic larval stage, instead laying eggs on land and guarding them until tiny salamanders hatch, skipping the gilled larval phase altogether. Each variation on the basic pattern represents an evolutionary experiment, or different solution to the challenges of living between water and land. What works in a cold mountain stream differs from what works in a warm, permanent lake or a seasonal desert pool. The salamanders and newts have diversified into all these niches, their life cycles fine-tuned by millions of years of natural selection to fit the specific demands of their habitats. While frogs hop through our backyards and salamanders occasionally emerge from beneath garden stones, there exists a third group of amphibians that most people have never seen, and many have never heard of. These are the caecilians, creatures so different from our mental image of amphibians that they seem to belong to another group of animals entirely. Caecilians are limbless, elongated amphibians that resemble large earthworms or small snakes. Their bodies are ringed with grooves called annuli, which give them a segmented appearance, though these are only skin folds and not true body segments. They range in length from about 4 inches to over 5 feet, depending on the species, with most falling somewhere in the middle of that range. Their skin is typically smooth and secretes mucus that helps them move through soil and keeps them moist. Some species have small, fish-like scales embedded in their skin, a primitive feature that most amphibians lost long ago in their evolutionary history. What immediately strikes anyone who encounters a caecilian is their head. It's built for burrowing, with a thick, bullet-shaped skull reinforced with bone. The skull bones have fused more extensively than in other amphibians, creating a solid battering ram that the animal uses to push through soil. The lower jaw is tightly attached to the skull, and powerful jaw muscles allow them to bite and hold onto prey underground. Their eyes are greatly reduced, or sometimes absent altogether, covered by skin or even bone in many species. Vision is of little use in the darkness of underground tunnels, and evolution has directed resources elsewhere. In place of eyes, caecilians have developed other senses. Between each eye socket and nostril sits a small, retractable tentacle, unique among amphibians. These tentacles are chemosensory organs, detecting chemical cues in the environment to locate prey and navigate through their subterranean world. When a caecilian is hunting or exploring, the tentacles extend slightly, sampling the chemical landscape of the soil. Caecilians are found in tropical and subtropical regions around the world. They inhabit parts of South and Central America, equatorial Africa, and southern Asia, including India, Sri Lanka, and parts of Southeast Asia. Despite this wide distribution, they are almost never seen. Their fossorial lifestyle keeps them hidden beneath the surface, and many people living in areas with caecilian populations are entirely unaware these creatures exist beneath their feet. Most caecilian species spend their entire lives underground, burrowing through soil, leaf litter, and rotting wood in search of food. They are carnivorous, feeding on earthworms, termites, beetle larvae, and other soft-bodied invertebrates they encounter in the soil. Some larger species have been known to eat small vertebrates, including other caecilians. They locate prey using their keen sense of smell and their chemosensory tentacles, then seize it with dozens of sharp, backward-curving teeth. Unlike snakes, which swallow prey whole and headfirst, caecilians can tear off chunks of larger prey items, passing food backward with movements of their jaws. A few species of caecilians are aquatic or semi-aquatic, living in streams, rivers, and flooded habitats. These aquatic caecilians have a laterally compressed tail that aids in swimming and may have more developed eyes than their terrestrial relatives, as vision is more useful in water where light penetrates. They hunt for fish, crustaceans, and other aquatic prey, demonstrating that even within this obscure group there is remarkable ecological diversity. Reproduction in caecilians reveals one of their most fascinating and unexpected behaviors: parental care. While most amphibians lay eggs and abandon them, many caecilian species show sophisticated nurturing behaviors. Some species lay eggs in burrows near water, and the female remains with the clutch, coiling around the eggs to protect them and keep them moist. She doesn't feed during this time, which can last several weeks, relying on stored energy to sustain herself while she guards her developing young. When the eggs hatch, the young of some species feed on their mother's skin. The female develops a specialized outer layer of skin, enriched with fats and other nutrients. The young caecilians, equipped with temporary teeth designed for this purpose, scrape off and consume this maternal skin. The mother's skin regenerates quickly, and she continues to produce new layers for her offspring to feed on until they're ready to fend for themselves. This behavior, called maternal dermatotrophy, was only discovered in recent decades and represents a form of parental care almost unknown elsewhere in the animal kingdom. Other caecilian species give birth to live young, making them one of the few groups of amphibians with viviparous reproduction. The developing young remain in the mother's oviduct, feeding on secretions produced by specialized glands in the oviduct wall, or even on unfertilized eggs. Some species have a sort of placental connection, though different in structure from mammalian placentas, that allows nutrient transfer from mother to offspring. When the young are born, they're fully formed, miniature versions of adults, ready to begin their subterranean lives. Very little is known about the life history of most caecilian species. Their hidden lifestyle makes them difficult to study, and their secretive nature means that basic questions about population sizes, movement patterns, and lifespans remain largely unanswered. Some species are known only from a handful of museum specimens collected decades or even a century ago, and whether they still exist is uncertain. This lack of knowledge is concerning because, like all amphibians, caecilians face threats from habitat destruction, pollution, and climate change. but conservation efforts are hampered by our limited understanding of their ecology. The few studies that have been conducted reveal creatures with slow life histories. Caecilians grow slowly, likely live for many years, and probably have low reproductive rates compared to frogs. These are characteristics that make populations vulnerable to disturbance. If adult mortality increases or habitat quality declines, populations may struggle to recover. Yet, because caecilians are not seen, their declines often go unnoticed. In recent years, scientists have begun using environmental DNA sampling and other molecular techniques to detect caecilians without having to dig them up, offering new hope for understanding their distributions and population dynamics. Acoustic monitoring, while more commonly used for frogs, has also revealed that some caecilians make sounds, possibly for communication, adding yet another unexpected dimension to their biology. The caecilians remind us that even in groups as familiar as amphibians, there are creatures living lives utterly different from those we imagine. They are the amphibians that have most fully committed to a terrestrial existence, at least in terms of time spent away from open water. Yet, they've done so by going underground rather than staying on the surface. In their own way, they too are creatures of boundaries, living at the interface between the surface world and the subterranean realm, neither fully one nor the other. One of the most elegant solutions evolution has found for living between water and land is the amphibian respiratory system. It's not a single system, but rather a suite of interconnected methods for obtaining oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide, each adapted to work in different environments and at different life stages. Understanding how amphibians breathe reveals much about the constraints and opportunities that come with their dual lifestyle. All amphibians begin life using gills. In the aquatic larval stage, whether a tadpole or a salamander larva, external or internal gills extract dissolved oxygen from the surrounding water. These gills are thin structures with a large surface area and a dense network of blood vessels lying just beneath the surface. Water flows over them, and oxygen diffuses from the water into the blood while carbon dioxide diffuses out. This is essentially the same respiratory system used by fish, and it works beautifully in water where oxygen is dissolved and readily available. But water and air are very different media for gas exchange. Air contains much more oxygen per unit volume than water does, about 30 times more under typical conditions. This means that once an animal can access atmospheric oxygen, it opens up a much richer resource. However, gills collapse in air, their delicate filaments sticking together, which drastically reduces the surface area available for gas exchange. This is why fish suffocate out of water, even though air contains more oxygen. Their gills simply don't function in air. As amphibian larvae develop and prepare for terrestrial life, lungs begin to form. These lungs start as outpocketings of the digestive tract, gradually developing into paired sacs that fill with air. The inner surface of amphibian lungs is relatively simple compared to the complex alveolar structure found in mammalian lungs. They're more like balloons with folds that increase surface area somewhat. But still, they represent a significant advance over having no lungs at all. Breathing with lungs requires a different mechanism than breathing with gills. In mammals, we use a diaphragm to create negative pressure in the chest cavity, pulling air into the lungs. Most amphibians lack a diaphragm and instead use a method called buccal pumping. The floor of the mouth is lowered, drawing air in through the nostrils. Then, the nostrils are closed, and the floor of the mouth is raised, forcing air into the lungs. To exhale, the process partly reverses, with some air expelled as the mouth floor lowers again. It's a less efficient system than what mammals use, but it works well enough for the lower metabolic demands of ectothermic animals. While lungs are important, the truly remarkable feature of amphibian respiration is cutaneous respiration, breathing through the skin. In all amphibians, regardless of whether they have gills, lungs, or both, the skin plays a role in gas exchange. Oxygen dissolves into the thin film of moisture on the skin's surface, and then diffuses through the skin into capillaries lying just beneath. Carbon dioxide moves in the opposite direction. The extent to which different species rely on cutaneous respiration varies enormously. In frogs, skin breathing typically accounts for a smaller proportion of total oxygen uptake, with lungs handling most of the oxygen exchange. However, carbon dioxide is more soluble than oxygen and diffuses more readily through moist membranes. So even in frogs with well-developed lungs, the majority of carbon dioxide may be expelled through the skin rather than the lungs. In salamanders, especially the lungless species, cutaneous respiration becomes the primary or sole method of gas exchange. The family Plethodontidae, with over 400 species, has entirely lost the ability to form lungs. These salamanders breathe exclusively through their skin and the lining of their mouths and throats. To maximize the surface area available for gas exchange, their bodies tend to be long and slender, increasing the ratio of surface area to volume. They also have dense networks of capillaries in the skin, and the skin itself is highly vascularized. Some aquatic salamanders have taken cutaneous respiration to remarkable extremes. The hellbender, a large fully aquatic salamander found in North American rivers, has extensive folds of skin along its sides that increase surface area. More than 90% of its oxygen uptake and carbon dioxide release occurs through its skin. It does have lungs, but they're reduced and play a minor role in respiration. Similarly, the Lake Titicaca water frog, which lives at high altitudes where oxygen is scarce, has developed incredible folds of loose skin that give it a baggy, wrinkled appearance. This adaptation greatly increases the surface area for gas exchange, allowing it to extract enough oxygen from the cold, oxygen-poor waters of its mountain lake home. The reliance on cutaneous respiration imposes constraints. For gas exchange through the skin to work efficiently, the skin must remain moist. If the skin dries out, the rate of oxygen diffusion plummets. This is why amphibians are so sensitive to humidity and why most species are active at night or during rainy weather when the air is saturated with moisture. It's also why many amphibians produce copious amounts of mucus. The mucus layer helps keep the skin moist and creates a continuous film for gas diffusion. Temperature also affects cutaneous respiration. Colder water can hold more dissolved oxygen than warm water, which is why many highly aquatic, cutaneous breathing species are found in cold, oxygen-rich streams. In warmer environments, the demand for oxygen increases as metabolism speeds up, but the supply may decrease if water temperatures rise. This mismatch can stress amphibian populations and may be one reason why some species are declining in response to climate change. The permeability of amphibian skin that makes cutaneous respiration possible also makes these animals vulnerable to environmental toxins. Pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, and other pollutants can be absorbed through the skin directly into the bloodstream. This vulnerability has made amphibians important bioindicators. Populations living in polluted environments often show declines before other animals do, serving as early warning signs of environmental degradation. In addition to oxygen and carbon dioxide, amphibians also regulate their water balance through their skin. Unlike drinking through the mouth, many amphibians absorb water directly through specialized regions of skin on their belly and thighs, often called the pelvic patch or seat patch. When a frog or salamander needs to rehydrate, it will often sit in shallow water or on moist ground, pressing this area against the substrate to take in water osmotically. This dual function of the skin for both respiration and water regulation represents a remarkable evolutionary compromise. It allows amphibians to exploit both aquatic and terrestrial environments, but it also ties them perpetually to moisture. They cannot venture far into truly dry habitats without risking rapid dehydration. Desert-dwelling species have evolved various strategies to cope, such as burrowing underground during dry seasons, producing waterproof cocoons, or being active only during brief rainy periods. But even these specialists cannot entirely escape the need for moisture. The amphibian respiratory system is thus a patchwork of adaptations, using gills when young and aquatic, transitioning to lungs for air breathing, and maintaining skin respiration throughout life. Each method has its advantages and limitations, and by employing all three at different times or simultaneously, amphibians have found a way to thrive in the challenging space between two worlds. To understand amphibians fully, we need to step back in time, far beyond the lifespan of any individual or even any species. We need to travel to a world 400 million years old, to an era when no animals with backbones had yet ventured onto land, when the continents were barren except for low-growing plants and the occasional arthropod. This is the world into which the ancestors of all land-dwelling vertebrates first emerged, and amphibians are the living representatives of that ancient transition. The story begins with lobe-finned fish, relatives of the modern coelacanth and lungfish, swimming in the shallow waters of the Devonian period. These fish had muscular fins supported by bones, rather than the thin, ray-like structures of most fish, and some had lungs or lung-like structures that allowed them to gulp air from the surface. Why they evolved these features is still debated, but likely it was an adaptation to living in oxygen-poor water, in environments where seasonal droughts were common, or in warm, stagnant pools where dissolved oxygen was scarce. Fossil evidence shows a gradual transition from fish to tetrapods, four-limbed vertebrates. One of the most famous transitional fossils is Tiktaalik rosier, discovered in Arctic Canada in rocks about 375 million years old. Tiktaalik had a body plan intermediate between fish and early tetrapods. It had scales and fins like a fish, but its front fins had bones arranged in a pattern remarkably similar to the limb bones of tetrapods, with recognizable equivalents to a humerus, radius, and ulna. Its head was flattened, and its eyes were on top of the skull rather than on the sides, suggesting it spent time looking upward from shallow water. The shift from fins to limbs didn't happen because early tetrapods were trying to colonize land. In fact, the earliest tetrapods, species like Acanthostega and Ichthyostega, were still fundamentally aquatic animals. They had gills, they lived in water, and their limbs weren't capable of supporting them on land. Instead, the limbs likely evolved for navigating through dense aquatic vegetation, for walking along the bottom of shallow ponds, or for pulling themselves up onto emergent vegetation or muddy banks. The ability to support weight on land came later. Over tens of millions of years, these early tetrapods diversified. Some lineages became more terrestrial, developing stronger limbs, more efficient lungs, and skin better suited to reducing water loss. The vertebral column strengthened to support the body's weight without the buoyancy of water. The skull structure changed to allow for more efficient jaw movements for feeding on land. Sensory systems adapted from detecting pressure waves in water to detecting sound waves in air. The inner ear evolved to pick up vibrations through bone rather than through water. By the Carboniferous period, sometimes called the Age of Amphibians, the land was filled with diverse amphibian-like creatures. Some were tiny, others were massive, crocodile-like predators several meters long. Many still spent much of their lives in water, but they were fully capable of terrestrial activity. The warm, swampy forests of this period provided ideal conditions for amphibians, with high humidity, abundant water, and plentiful prey. But these early amphibians faced one critical limitation that continues to define amphibians today. They had to return to water to reproduce. Their eggs were soft and permeable, requiring moisture to avoid desiccation. The developing embryos needed an aquatic environment. This dependence on water for reproduction meant that amphibians could never fully escape aquatic habitats. Even those species that became almost entirely terrestrial as adults were still tied to water by the demands of their reproductive cycle. It was the evolution of the amniotic egg that ultimately freed vertebrates from this constraint. Reptiles developed a hard or leathery eggshell and internal membranes that allowed the embryo to develop in a self-contained aquatic environment. With the amniotic egg, vertebrates could reproduce on land, and the lineages that would become reptiles, birds, and mammals diverged from the amphibian lineage. They went on to dominate terrestrial ecosystems, while amphibians remained forever tied to moisture. Yet, amphibians survived. Through mass extinctions, through ice ages, through the rise and fall of dinosaurs, through dramatic shifts in climate and geography, amphibians persisted. They diversified into thousands of species, occupying ecological niches that amniotes couldn't easily fill. Their permeable skin, while making them vulnerable to dehydration and pollution, also gave them incredible sensitivity to their environment and allowed for cutaneous respiration. Their biphasic life cycle, while tying them to water, also allowed them to exploit both aquatic and terrestrial resources, reducing competition with purely aquatic or purely terrestrial species. Modern amphibians are the descendants of those ancient pioneers. When you watch a tadpole develop legs and emerge from a pond, you're witnessing an echo of that ancient transition from water to land, played out in fast forward over a few short weeks. The developmental program that transforms tadpole to frog is built on genetic pathways that have been refined over hundreds of millions of years, and it recapitulates, in a general sense, the evolutionary journey of the lineage. Amphibians are living fossils in the sense that they maintain a way of life that has remained fundamentally unchanged for an immense span of time. They haven't needed to evolve into something radically different because their basic approach to life works. They've refined it, specialized it, adapted it to countless different environments, but the core pattern remains: a life lived between water and land, a metamorphosis from aquatic to terrestrial, a reliance on moisture, and a sensitivity to the world around them. In this way, amphibians are not just animals of the present moment, but carriers of deep evolutionary history. They connect us to an ancient past when the boundary between water and land was still being explored, when the very possibility of life away from water was new. Every time we encounter a frog or a salamander, we're meeting a descendant of the first vertebrates to venture onto land, a representative of a lineage that has been navigating between two worlds for nearly as long as terrestrial life itself has existed. While amphibians may seem vulnerable, small, soft-bodied creatures without armor or speed to escape predators, many species possess a formidable defense: chemical weapons stored within their skin. The skin of amphibians is not merely a boundary between internal and external, but a sophisticated organ capable of producing and secreting a remarkable array of biologically active compounds. These range from mildly distasteful to lethally toxic, and they represent one of the most diverse chemical arsenals found in any group of vertebrates. Embedded within amphibian skin are two main types of glands. Mucus glands produce the slimy secretions that keep the skin moist and aid in cutaneous respiration and water balance. But granular glands, sometimes called poison glands, produce defensive chemicals. These glands can be distributed across the entire body or concentrated in specific regions, such as behind the eyes in toads, forming prominent parotoid glands that bulge visibly from the skin. The compounds secreted by these glands fall into several chemical categories. Many amphibians produce biogenic amines like serotonin and histamine, which can cause pain and irritation if the skin secretions come into contact with a predator's mouth or eyes. Others produce peptides and small proteins, some of which have antimicrobial properties, helping protect the amphibian from bacterial and fungal infections. Still others produce alkaloids or steroids with more potent toxic effects. In some groups, these toxins are synthesized by the amphibian's own biochemical pathways. Salamanders of the family Salamandridae produce samandarine and related steroids. These toxins affect the nervous system, causing muscle spasms and, in sufficient doses, paralysis. Certain toads produce bufatoxins, another group of steroids that affect heart function and can be deadly to predators. The rough-skinned newt, Taricha granulosa, found in the Pacific Northwest, produces tetrodotoxin, one of the most potent neurotoxins known. A single adult newt can contain enough tetrodotoxin to kill several adult humans, though the toxin is only dangerous if ingested, or if it enters the bloodstream through a wound. Tetrodotoxin blocks sodium channels in nerve and muscle cells, preventing action potentials and thereby shutting down the nervous system. Animals that try to eat a rough-skinned newt typically experience rapid paralysis, respiratory failure, and death. Interestingly, some populations of garter snakes that prey on these newts have evolved resistance to tetrodotoxin, leading to an evolutionary arms race, where newts in areas with resistant snakes produce even higher levels of toxin, and snakes in those areas evolve even greater resistance. But perhaps the most famous amphibian toxins are the alkaloids of poison dart frogs. These small, brilliantly colored frogs from Central and South America have captivated scientists and the public alike. Their skins contain a diverse array of alkaloid compounds, including batrachotoxins, pumiliotoxins, histrionicotoxins, and epibatidine, among others. Batrachotoxins, found in some species of Phyllobates frogs, are among the most toxic natural substances known. They irreversibly activate sodium channels, causing nerves and muscles to fire uncontrollably until the organism dies from respiratory or cardiac failure. What makes the poison dart frogs especially fascinating is that they don't synthesize most of these alkaloids themselves. Instead, they sequester them from their diet. In the wild, these frogs feed heavily on certain species of mites, ants, and other small arthropods that contain alkaloids. The frogs consume these prey, absorb the alkaloids, and store them in their skin. When the same species of frogs are raised in captivity on a diet free of alkaloid-containing arthropods, they produce little or no toxin. Conversely, feeding them alkaloid-rich prey restores their toxicity. This dietary sourcing of toxins has profound implications. It means that the diversity of alkaloids found in poison frog skin reflects the diversity of their arthropod prey, which in turn is influenced by the local environment. Frogs from different populations of the same species can have different alkaloid profiles depending on what arthropods are available in their habitat. It also means that as habitats change or prey populations decline, the chemical defenses of these frogs may weaken, leaving them more vulnerable to predation. The bright coloration of poison dart frogs is an example of aposematism, or warning coloration. By being conspicuously colored in reds, yellows, oranges, and blues, these frogs advertise their toxicity to potential predators. Most predators learn to avoid brightly colored prey after a single unpleasant or deadly encounter, and the bold patterns make the frogs easy to remember. This is the opposite strategy from camouflage. Rather than hiding, toxic species benefit from being seen and recognized. Not all amphibian toxins are used solely for defense against predators. Antimicrobial peptides found in amphibian skin secretions play a crucial role in protecting against infection. Amphibians live in environments rich in bacteria and fungi, and their moist, permeable skin could easily become colonized by pathogens. The antimicrobial peptides secreted by granular glands help prevent this, creating a chemical barrier on the skin's surface. These peptides often work by disrupting bacterial cell membranes, and they can be effective against a broad range of microorganisms, including some that are resistant to conventional antibiotics. The discovery of these antimicrobial peptides has generated significant interest in the pharmaceutical industry. Some amphibian-derived peptides are being studied as potential new antibiotics or as templates for designing synthetic drugs. The peptide meganin, isolated from the skin of the African clawed frog, has shown promise in treating infections, and other peptides are being investigated for their potential to fight cancer or regulate immune responses. However, the presence of potent toxins and bioactive compounds in amphibian skin also makes these animals vulnerable in a different way. Pollution can interfere with the production of these compounds or overwhelm the chemical defenses. Climate change may alter the availability of the arthropod prey from which poison frogs sequester alkaloids, potentially reducing their toxicity over time. And habitat destruction eliminates the environments where both the amphibians and their alkaloid-rich prey live. The chemical defenses of amphibians are not static, but part of a dynamic interaction between the animals and their environment, shaped by evolution, diet, and ecology. They represent millions of years of refinement, a chemical library built up through countless encounters between predators and prey. In their skin, amphibians carry a pharmacopoeia of compounds, each one a testament to the power of natural selection to solve the problem of survival in a dangerous world. In the late 1980s, herpetologists gathering for the First World Congress of Herpetology began sharing troubling observations. Species that had been common, even abundant, in certain areas were disappearing. Populations were crashing without obvious explanation. Frogs were vanishing from protected rainforests, from pristine mountain streams, from places where habitat destruction and pollution seemed unlikely culprits. It was a mystery, and it was global. Over the following decades, the scale of the problem became clear. Amphibians were declining at rates unprecedented for a vertebrate class. The IUCN Global Amphibian Assessment revealed that more than 40% of amphibian species were in decline, and about 1/3 were threatened with extinction. Some species that had been abundant in the 1970s were entirely gone by the late 1990s. Populations that had persisted for millennia blinked out in a matter of years. Habitat destruction was, and remains, a major driver of amphibian declines, particularly in tropical regions where deforestation is rampant. When forests are cleared, streams dry up, leaf litter disappears, microclimates shift, and the moist environments amphibians depend on vanish. Fragmentation isolates populations, making it difficult for individuals to disperse and find new breeding sites, and small isolated populations are vulnerable to inbreeding and local extinction from stochastic events. Pollution, too, takes a toll. Pesticides and herbicides wash from agricultural lands into streams and ponds where amphibians breed. Even at low concentrations, these chemicals can disrupt development, depress immune function, and cause deformities. Heavy metals from mining operations accumulate in amphibian tissues. Nitrogen runoff from fertilizers alters aquatic ecosystems, sometimes favoring algal blooms that deplete oxygen and change water chemistry in ways harmful to amphibians. Climate change adds another layer of stress. Amphibians are ectothermic and highly sensitive to temperature. Warmer temperatures can accelerate development in some cases, but they can also increase metabolic demands, dry out habitats, and alter the timing of life cycle events, leading to mismatches between when amphibians emerge and when their food sources are available. Changes in precipitation patterns can cause breeding ponds to dry up before tadpoles complete metamorphosis, or floods can wash away eggs. At high elevations and latitudes, warming is shrinking the cool, moist habitats that some species require. But the most devastating threat to amphibians is a pathogen that wasn't even identified until 1998. The chytrid fungus Batrachochytrium dendrobatitis, known as BD. This microscopic fungus infects the skin of amphibians, the very organ they depend on for respiration and water balance. As the infection spreads, it causes the skin to thicken and shed abnormally, disrupting its functions. Infected amphibians become lethargic, lose their appetite, and often die from cardiac arrest, likely caused by imbalances in electrolytes that the compromised skin can no longer regulate. BD is not a new organism. Genetic studies and examinations of museum specimens show that it has been present in some populations for over a century. However, a particularly virulent strain appears to have spread globally in recent decades, possibly through the international trade in amphibians. Frogs were once widely traded for use in pregnancy tests, as food, and for research, and this trade likely spread BD to new regions where native amphibians had no resistance. The impact of chytridiomycosis, the disease caused by BD, has been catastrophic. A comprehensive study published in 2019 estimated that BD has caused declines in at least 501 amphibian species worldwide, with 90 of those driven to extinction, and another 124 declining by more than 90%. Australia, Central America, and South America have been hit particularly hard. Entire genera, like the harlequin frogs of the genus Atelopus, have been decimated, with dozens of species either extinct or critically endangered. The fungus thrives in cool, moist conditions, which ironically are the same conditions that many amphibians prefer. High elevation species have been especially vulnerable because the cooler temperatures at altitude favor the fungus. In some regions, the arrival of BD caused population collapses so rapid and complete that researchers watching healthy populations one year returned the next to find them gone. Intriguingly, not all species are equally susceptible. Some appear resistant to infection, harboring the fungus on their skin without developing disease. Others are highly susceptible, with infections leading to nearly 100% mortality. The reasons for these differences are still being studied. Some species may have antimicrobial peptides in their skin that inhibit BD growth. Others may have beneficial bacteria on their skin that protect against the fungus. Genetic variation within populations also plays a role, and there are signs that in some populations, individuals with greater resistance are surviving and passing on their genes, offering a glimmer of hope for evolution in action. A second chytrid fungus, Batrachochytrium salamandrivorans, known as BSAL, has emerged more recently, affecting salamanders and newts. First identified in Europe, it has caused severe declines in European fire salamander populations. The United States, which has extraordinary salamander diversity, banned the import of many salamander species in 2016 to prevent BSAL from arriving and spreading among native populations. Conservation efforts are underway to combat these threats, but they are challenging. Habitat protection is essential, ensuring that amphibians have places to live that are shielded from deforestation, pollution, and other disturbances. Captive breeding programs have been established for the most critically endangered species, creating insurance populations that can potentially be reintroduced to the wild once conditions improve. Scientists are exploring treatments for chytridiomycosis. Some species can be cured of BD infections using antifungal drugs, and researchers are experimenting with probiotics, beneficial bacteria that can be applied to amphibian skin to help them resist infection. There's also interest in thermal refugia, creating warm microclimates where amphibians can raise their body temperature enough to inhibit fungal growth, a natural form of fever therapy. Public awareness and education are crucial. Most people are unaware of the amphibian crisis, and without public support, funding for conservation is difficult to secure. Citizen science programs, where volunteers monitor local amphibian populations and report observations, are helping scientists track changes and identify areas where populations are thriving or declining. Yet, despite these efforts, the future remains uncertain for many amphibian species. The threats are multiple and interact in complex ways. An amphibian population stressed by habitat loss and pollution may be more susceptible to disease. Climate change can shift the ranges of both amphibians and their pathogens, leading to new encounters and new outbreaks. Invasive species, such as the American bullfrog, can carry BD without succumbing to it, serving as reservoirs that maintain the fungus in environments where it might otherwise die out. What gives reason for cautious optimism is the resilience that some populations have shown. A small number of species that crashed during initial BD outbreaks are now recovering, suggesting that natural selection is favoring resistant individuals. Protected habitats are maintaining populations that might otherwise be lost. And the global community of scientists, conservationists, and concerned citizens is more mobilized than ever to address the crisis. Amphibians are indicators of environmental health. Their permeable skin and biphasic life cycles make them sensitive to changes that other animals might not notice until later. When amphibians decline, it's often a sign that ecosystems are under stress in ways that will eventually affect other species, including humans. Protecting amphibians is not just about preserving these particular animals, but about safeguarding the health of the broader environment. The crisis facing amphibians is a reminder that we live in an interconnected world. Actions taken on one continent can have repercussions on another through trade and travel. The health of remote mountain streams is linked to agricultural practices in distant valleys. The fate of a tiny poison frog in a tropical rainforest is connected to global markets and climate patterns. Understanding these connections and acting on them is one of the great challenges of our time, and amphibians, with their ancient lineage and remarkable adaptations, are asking us to pay attention. In the quiet of a forest pond, as dusk settles and the first frogs begin to call, there's a sense of continuity with the past. These voices have been part of Earth's soundscape for hundreds of millions of years. They represent lineages that survived when most life was wiped out, that adapted when continents split and climates shifted, that found ways to thrive in nearly every environment where water and land meet. They deserve our respect, our protection, and our effort to ensure that those voices continue into the future. If you found this journey through the world of amphibians illuminating, if these stories of transformation and adaptation brought a sense of wonder to your evening, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue exploring the quiet wonders of the natural world, one peaceful night at a time. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll carry with you the image of a tiny froglet emerging from water for the first time, stepping onto land with new legs, breathing new air, embodying in its small form the ancient miracle of life's endless adaptations, forever changing, forever finding new ways to bridge the distance between different worlds.